Hi friends, welcome. Welcome to session 3 of this little workshop series. Today we're talking about giving essay feedback. And if you're watching this live, as some of you are, how many? 56 of you are, you know that like, wait a minute, this is too early to do this, but hopefully you'll kind of file this away and you've got lots of stuff. When you do start this, I'm happy to talk about a timeline if folks are interested in like, when I think is a good timeline. Remind me at the end for like working through these essays with students, whether you're in high school setting or working with students one-on-one. Mostly, folks on the session today are school counselors. Some of the things that I want to just for those of you who are school counselors, some of you are on CEG Live and some of you aren't. Will you just let me know in the chat if you're already signed up for CEG Live, or if you're not, or if you have no idea what I'm talking about? That'll give me a quick temperature check. CEG Live is essentially a series of, as it says at the top, free boot camps. And I've updated this page a little bit just to give some more details about it. And basically, it's free for students and pay what you can for schools. We've basically, here, let me show you when the dates are. It's in June. There, we've got option 1 is mid-June. Option 2 is like later in the summer. Like if your students, if you think your students will prefer that, they can pick. And then we've updated with like what we're calling our assets. That's like a marketing term for like, stuff that you can use to like spread the word with students. So we're trying to make this really easy for you to share this with students. And then you'll see like, shareable language for counselors. So there's like little things that you can like, copy and paste in there. So yeah, hopefully that's useful. What else do I want to share with you? We've got other cool things that are happening. We've got 2 new courses actually coming up that I'll stop sharing my screen for a second. We've got a course coming up on, let's see. Oh, you know what? Before I get to the courses, we've got email templates. Some of you know about this, some of you don't. So let me just share this real quick. I shared this at the Spokane Regional Conference, or the Super ACAC, and folks were like, what? So these are email templates. We're approaching May. So if you're trying to figure out what should I email my students in May, you click this link and it opens up a Google Doc that has like resources that you can share with students. Pretty cool, like books like Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be, and how to get official SAT practice tests, if that's something your students care about. And there's basically like a whole Google folder here that has every month and all the grades. And to get access to those, all you do is if you put your name and email in and hit sign me up, we'll actually email you every month when those things are ready, which is pretty cool. I'll put that in the chat here as well. What else? Oh, Kath is saying they've been helpful. My goal is to get 100 counselors signed up for this thing this week. So maybe that's you. I don't know. Hopefully that's useful. The other thing, how to build a great college list. This is a course that's coming up. We'll email you more about this, but this is a pay what you can course that starts in a few weeks. It's towards the tail end of like AP's stuff with Stephen Antonoff. And then one that we just launched today is a course with Sanjay Mitchell. Whoops, I got the wrong link. I'll send it later. He's pretty rad. And it's essentially a course on how to create a more effective college counseling program. So I'll share more about that at the end. All right. What are we talking about today? We're talking about a simple way to conceptualize the writing process, which is to say, when you're giving feedback to students, how do you figure out, okay, how do I center myself and not just give them all the notes all the time? So it's something that's hopefully going to save you some time. And then I'm going to talk about some like do's and don'ts. I don't think, for example, well, I don't want to spoil it. Some do's and don'ts on giving feedback on a first draft. 4 questions that you can ask of any draft, no matter what the student's bringing. A short guide to revising an essay that is not about challenges, which is what I call a montage essay. And 4 questions and a brief guide that you can use when a student is writing an essay that is about challenges. If you're interested and you want to get into the Q&A, I can talk a little bit about how to talk to students about writing about mental health challenges. It's something that I get a lot of questions about. I've been thinking about a lot. I just recorded a YouTube video on it. So I've got all the bullet points in my head. All right, so let's jump in. So when it comes to helping students revise essays, this is that choose your own adventure tool that's part of CEG Live that I've talked about for the last couple of weeks. And when it comes to revising, you could just go right into revising, but I actually want to point you to this counselors section up here. So when you click counselors, you'll see here a couple different, guides here. When it comes to the revising part, here are some questions that might come up for you. So for example, how do students come up with a good opening? Or what if their challenges aren't that compelling? And what this is going to do is it's going to jump you into different sections of the tool. It's kind of like a clickable table of contents that'll help you answer like these specific questions. So again, I want to show you where this is because this will be a good reference point for later. It's up here. It says counselors. Okay. When it comes to giving students feedback, I think there are two things that we're looking at. We're looking at, are we helping them pick a topic or are we helping them improve a draft? So let's talk about if a student comes to us with a draft and we're like, okay, is this a good topic or not? Here's a quick way to what I call diagnose if it's a good topic or not. I find that topics that are not about challenges, I'm looking for two things. I'm looking for, is it uncommon or is it common? And I'm also looking for, is it elastic or not elastic? Now, what do I mean by this? A topic that is more uncommon, blacksmithing, to use like a random example, or, a really specific experience that a student had related to, a particular interest that they have that is uncommon. For example, stamp collecting is somewhat uncommon, would be more uncommon than say, the big game essay, right? So when I'm looking at students' essays, I'm kind of putting them on this spectrum in my brain. And then elastic means, can the student connect whatever that thing is to lots of different parts of themselves? So an example, if a student just got a job at an ice cream shop and they haven't really spent a lot of time doing it, maybe that's somewhat uncommon because, ice cream shops, not a ton of students write about working in an ice cream shop, although they sometimes write about jobs. It could be that they don't have enough experience yet, that it's elastic. So I'm not saying students shouldn't write about common things. I just think that if they do, it's going to be a little bit harder to stand out. So quick framework, you can share this with students. The more uncommon, the more elastic, the more likely that is to make a quote unquote good essay topic. That's with students who are writing about non-challenges based topics. Now, if a student is writing about challenges, I find that the essays that tend to stand out are ones that deal with difficult challenges, as opposed to, for example, I got a B or a C in a particular class, and have some kind of, when I say wow insight, I mean an insight that gives me some sense of how this student has metabolized this experience. And the quote unquote challenges essays that blend in, the challenges weren't all that compelling, or I didn't understand why the student cared so much. And the insights just are meh, they really just weren't there. Okay, so I use this framework when talking to students, and more importantly, I equip them with it so that in future conversations, they can kind of have this little shoulder counselor in their brains, shoulder Ethan, that is like giving them advice based on, the topics, okay? This, you don't really need to get into this right now, whoops. But if you click this thing where it says where to send them in the tool, if a student has a great topic, great. They can go on to the next steps. If it's not so great, I think the best time to start over with a new topic is right now, because right now is when they're going to have the most time to work on that new topic. So I just send them back to brainstorming, and I'll do this pretty often. Like up through June, July, August, I'm not shy. Even if a student has November deadlines, I'm not shy about sending them back to brainstorm more ideas. And I'd rather do that sooner than later. Okay, let's assume though the student has a topic that's pretty awesome or that we think could be workable. Here's a way to conceptualize the writing process. I like to think about it based on content first, and then structure, and then details. So this is the what, this is the how, and then these are the smaller concerns. So far, what we've been talking about in terms of topic is I'm talking about at the content level. The reason I offer this is that I think sometimes it can be tempting on a first draft to jump into the details and be like, oh, I don't know if this grammar is right or this spelling is right. I see this sometimes in English classes where students are trying to be letter perfect in certain ways. But I feel like if we jump down to this level first, especially on a first draft, then I think subliminally it's sending a message to the student that the content and the structure are solid, good to go. So I want to advocate for us thinking about the content, the what first, before we get into these, what I would consider lower level concerns. If it's a narrative essay, AKA, is it a challenge? I'm asking myself, are the challenges clear and compelling? Do we care? Do we think that this is something that a mission reader would care about? If it's a montage, is the topic elastic? Is it stretchy enough to help the student demonstrate lots of sides of themselves? So here are my tips on a first draft. Don't touch the grammar. Again, that's going to send the message that the content structure is solid. I would say don't proofread either, because we don't want to send the message to the student that this is where they should be focusing their time and energy. So quick tips on the first draft. Maybe I'm preaching to the choir here. But when it comes to figuring out, what are the questions to ask about an essay draft? If the student is writing about challenges, here are 4 questions that you can ask and, have the student answer. And you can do this either via Google Docs, or if you have the opportunity to meet them in person, you can talk to them about this in person. So for a challenges-based essay, is it clear what the challenges even are? You'll notice sometimes you're reading a thing and you're like, this essay isn't working, but I'm not quite sure why. Sometimes it's just not quite clear what the challenges are, because sometimes the students may be keeping it vague because they don't want to get into all the details. Or sometimes it feels like, okay, you've said the challenge, but I don't really know what that means. Is it clear what the effects of the challenges were on the student? Sometimes I think the student takes it for granted, or they assume that, if they say my parents experienced X or I experienced Y, then the reader is going to know. And I think it's really important to remind students that, hey, we're not in your brain and we can't know what the impacts were on you unless you tell us. So not just the challenges, but what were the impacts? And the reason I like to separate these is that I think that it can be cool to put these in one paragraph and these to put in a separate paragraph. Really simple advice that you can give to a student. This is the next thing. Is it clear what the student did to overcome the challenges? This is usually the middle of the essay. And then is it clear what they learned through these experiences? Again, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, and these may seem like really basic questions, but if you literally just like copy and paste these questions and be like, hey, students, here's a question to ask, even before you send me your draft, that can be a cool step that can maybe save you and maybe them some time. Okay, if the student is not writing about challenges, using what I call a montage, oops, there's somebody's on mute. Sweet. A montage essay is basically an essay where, as I talked about last time, a student is using some thematic thread to connect different parts of their lives. So the first question to ask is it clear what the topic or thematic thread is? This is another one that I think we skip over sometimes. We're like, the essay's not working, but I'm not sure why. Sometimes it can be really clarifying to just ask a student, hey, what's the topic of this essay? Like, what do you feel like this essay is about? There's an exercise that can help them do that if we've got time, I'll talk about log lines later on. I'm like reminding you all to remind me. Based on your interest, you can let me know if you want me to get into it in Q&A. The second thing is, does the student have specific examples for each paragraph that clearly connect back to the thematic thread? So let's say the student, for example, is writing about board games. And I'm going, okay, my essay is about board games and how they've impacted my life. And it's just super general language. Then obviously the super specific advice you can give to a student is like, okay, which board games are were meaningful to you? Is it Downforce, or is it Settlers of Catan, or is it Rear Window, which I've never actually played before? And what value did you gain, or what did you learn from each of those particular games? Just asking students that question can lead them to a path towards revision. Next, do the values come through clearly in the specific examples? Sometimes you'll read an essay and you'll be like, you know what? I just feel like it's a little bit light, or I don't feel like I'm learning enough about you. Usually when I think that, it's because I'm not clear what the values are. And I think values are so important because this directly connects to what are you going to bring to a college campus? So it's usually either the specific examples or the values that are missing from a montage essay. And that's how I know if a topic is working or not, if the student's able to come up with specific examples that are connected to specific values. And this is sort of like a later concern, are there so what moments that surprise me, that reveal something that's not elsewhere in the application, that give me a sense of how the student's brain and heart really work? I'm going to delve just briefly into this, but when it comes to sort of diagnosing each of these things, if the challenges and effects aren't clear, there's a specific place that you can send them to clarify that. If the challenges and effects could be more compelling, there are specific ways that students can do that. Let me give you one example of these. If, for example, the what I did about it element needs to be strengthened. So let's say a student has written about the challenges and the effects, but they're like, I don't know what I did about it. Or they're like, you know what, I didn't do anything about it. And you know them and you know that they actually have taken steps to overcome this challenge. You can send them here. Check this out. So this is steps for revising the what I did about it section of your essay. So here are 11 ideas for improving the what I did part of your story. So questions that students can ask. What did you do as a result of or thanks to your challenges? What moment changed things for you? Was there a turning point? When I saw the look on my mother's face, I knew I had to do something. Or after my father left, or after so-and-so received the text, I knew I had to step up. Did you take responsibility for anything you hadn't before? taking care of family members, making sure grandma took her medicine? Did you step up at school, in your community? Where did you go that you'd never been before? Maybe physically you went somewhere. I learned to take the bus by myself. But maybe you went places you'd never been emotionally, like you learned to be honest with your mom or learn to ask for help. So the purpose of this section, and really all of these sections that are inside the revising part, is to ask a bunch of questions and to kind of like a little bit create a little shoulder counselor for them. Do you know this term? By shoulder counselor, what I mean is like, in those cartoons when you have like a shoulder angel and a shoulder devil, this is like creating a little shoulder counselor. So what I've tried to do inside this tool is to create a little shoulder Ethan or shoulder you if you share it with them, so that it's asking them all these questions. Yes, this is before the machines take over and just does it for us. We still have to like point them to resources. So a bunch of questions, and then I tried to split it up. So like, here are more ideas that could go in the middle of the essay to strengthen that. Did you bring anyone together along the way? Your club, your family. What did you become more curious about? Ooh, then I got more into like nutrition and thinking about all the ways that I haven't been paying attention to my health. How did you, change roles in particular ways? So here's a bunch of stuff, bunch of ways that students can get into this if they're not sure specifically on how to improve the middle of their essay. For the montage, if a student is like trying to figure out how do I even like come up with specific examples, here's a quick guide to doing that. I call this the up-leveling your paragraphs guide. I use this a lot, so for some of you, this will be repeat, forgive me. But I feel like a way to create more, a more interesting middle paragraphs is by generating uncommon connections. So when possible, I think uncommon topics, uncommon connections, and uncommon language, or I should say less common, are really the things that can help students stand out. And a simple exercise of this is to brainstorm the cliche version of your essay, or it could go specifically for a paragraph. So let's say, for example, you're writing about cooking. And a common connection would be like, yeah, cooking is like, help me learn about health. And I don't think these are bad, okay? And I try to put this here. I just think that they're more likely to blend in. The reader's less likely to view that as an insight and go like, oh, wow, I learned something about myself. But I feel like if you can find those moments that'll surprise the reader, and I just linked to this values list right here. So let's just do this real quick together. If a student's writing about cooking, maybe health, nutrition are going to be kind of obvious. What are some uncommon connections that a student could write about in relation to cooking that might be a little bit more surprising?
Are we supposed to speak?
Let's do it in the, yeah, feel free to speak.
Okay.
Feel free to do it in the chat. Yes, but yes, you speak. Go.
Okay, what jumped out for me was like resourcefulness and joy.
Oh yeah, can you double click, say more?
It could even be spirituality, or mindfulness.
Amazing. Yes, let me click on mindfulness. Like, how could cooking relate to mindfulness? I think I lost you. Are you? And sorry, I missed your name, but yes, person who unmuted. How could cooking?
Sorry, I'm back. I'm Ida. Mindfulness. Well, I talk about flow and getting into a zone where you lose track of time, right?
Beautiful.
And that's something that can really surprise us because we don't know what experiences or activities will bring us into that flow. And something like cooking can surprisingly get you there.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, Ida. Beautiful. This is great. And so the simple thing to do here is to just do exactly what we just did. And you can do it in a workshop setting like we're doing right now. And you actually just do exactly what I did, which is like, what are the obvious ones? Have people comment. And then, they can raise their hands if they're live or doing the chat. And then say, okay, what are some uncommon ones? And I find that this is really fun to do with whole topics. So like a student's writing about a common topic like volleyball, brainstorm the cliche volleyball essay, and then boom, let's pop out and brainstorm some uncommon connections. So really simple, only takes a couple minutes, and then students kind of see what we're going for here. So part of because we're stretched on time often, part of what I'm trying to do is offer frameworks, like here's what makes a good topic or not, and offer resources that when they're on their own and they're like, how do I do this? You can offer them this uncommon connections exercise. And even though it's hard and it's going to be maybe easier to do with a partner, in which you could set them up with a partner. I want us to be able to, to be giving students these resources because these critical thinking skills are the things that are going to happen, help them outside of this college essay writing process. So yes, it's going to help them in this process, but we're trying to give them tools for thinking about this. So I wanted to just make sure that today, even though I've talked about this one on other sessions before, we talked a little bit about making uncommon connections, because I think it's a really important key to helping students stand out, especially in those, montage essays. Okay. What else do I want to say about revising? You know what? I think I am going to talk about log lines for a second, because Ida pinged it and reminded me. And I don't often talk about this, but when I do. So here's a log line. So when students are trying to figure out their topic and they're kind of like confused, I feel like asking students to come up with a log line, which is a 1 to 3 sentence description of the personal statement, can be a really nice way of helping them center. So a log line is something like this. The stickers on my laptops, this is for a montage essay, are like a passport that shows where I've been in my life. They represent my creativity, open-mindedness, family, commitment to social justice, and love for entrepreneurship. So all the student is doing there is they're naming the topic. This is about the stickers on my laptop. These are my essence objects, and connecting it to values. And each of these values is going to point to a different paragraph. So one of the things I'll do, and I'm going to do this in the CEG live sessions, is I'm going to have students pitch me their log lines. And I'll do this in a group setting. It's really fun. They'll basically come up with, here's the idea based on brainstorming work that we've done. And then what's your log line? What's the topic that you're thinking about? And what are some different values? And the reason I like to do this early on is that if a student is writing about, let's say, for example, cooking, and they're like, they represent my commitment to health and nutrition and meticulousness, I can see that that's probably going to turn into an essay that might be a little bit more common. And so what I want to do is I want to say, hey, I think it might be cool to try and brainstorm some other values and make some more uncommon connections. If a student's writing about challenges, here's an example. Growing up, I experienced challenges related to domestic abuse, alcoholism, and being undocumented. Those are the challenges, which led to financial difficulties and increased family responsibilities. Those are the effects on the student's life. These led me to becoming my own teacher, supporting my family financially, and taking on several leadership roles. This is what the student did about it. Ultimately, I learned how I value autonomy, doing things not because I must, but because I choose to, what I learned. So just to clarify, I don't think a log line needs to be in a personal statement. It can be. Sometimes students write it and like this becomes their opening. And it's like, cool, that's a fine placeholder opening. I'm good with that for a first draft because I want to know, does the middle of the essay work? In other words, is the student able to come up with specific examples that support these values? Okay, that's another quick tip. I really encourage students to not stress about their openings or their endings, especially in the start. We'll figure out the middle first. And because if the middle's not working, forget the opening that you spent 10 hours on. It's not going to work because we don't have the examples. That's the meat of the matter. The log line is super simple. If you're writing a montage, what's the topic and what are the values you want to show in the essay? If it's a narrative, what are the challenges and effects, what you did and what you learned? And you can put those in, a separate sentence each. There's a little list here with examples of log lines, and I'll put this in the chat. Where you could just basically offer, give students these examples so they can sort of start to think through these. When is this useful? Let me put it in the chat before I forget. It's useful, I think, not just at the beginning of the process. In fact, I think that this can be sometimes overwhelming for certain students at the beginning. I think it's useful a little bit later when they've already started to come up with ideas, but they're still like trying to find their way, find their place. So in other words, I would say that this is useful like not necessarily at like the 1% part of their process before they brainstorm a bunch of ideas. Let them brainstorm, let them try some things. Maybe they failed a little bit and you're at like the 30% part of the process where maybe some students have drafts, maybe some students have an idea, but they're not sure if it's going to work. Then drop the log line thing. For some students, it's going to be like, oh my gosh, now I have to commit to like a particular topic. That's useful. Some students are like, oh, I had 3 different topics. I'm going to pick this one. And, or they're going to try and work all 3 topics into the same log line. And you're going to be like, this is too confusing. If you can't explain it to someone in 1 to 3 sentences, it could be that it's too convoluted in your brain. Simplify it. 1 to 3 sentences. Say it to me. What are the values you want to cover? Boom, we're on. I know it sounds a little bit like I'm oversimplifying, but I think that it can be really useful for clarifying things, especially in that sort of like, I want to say like 1/4 to 1/3 of the way through the process. All right. Jumping back in, what else do I want to say about revising? There's a bunch more in here. Let me show you some other stuff. I like to talk to students about the openings of their essay, like a little bit later, like kind of in the middle of the process. Like I said, I don't want them to obsess about it. Another big thing is like coming up with insight. Inside the tool, you'll see like a ton of different ways to help students come up with those insights. This is not something that I think students should do like right at the very beginning, because it's going to stress them out too much. But when they've got a draft, they've got their examples, how can they help up level those? Here are some different ways to do that. And I give a bunch of examples here. I'm not going to go through all of them today because I think it'll just melt our brains a little bit. There's also a little resource here on writing a great transition sentence. So what I did here is Andy, who works with me, and we basically just went through like a bunch of essays and just looked at how are they transitioning and came up with like 9 different ways for students to like, transition. And there are just different ways. And so this is for like students who are like not sure if like the essay flows or not. So let me give you a quick framework for thinking about this. And this is sort of like the why that most people would skip over, and I think most students skip over. I think at the beginning of the essay, the student needs to build trust with the reader. And by build trust, I mean, it's sending a message to them that, one, this is going to be delivering what they want, which is skills, qualities, values, and interests that they're going to bring to a college campus. And I think in part, the student is trying to signal that this is going to be at least somewhat interesting. That's something I put in here, and I just want to say it to you kind of, I know I'm recording, but like unofficially. And there are a couple different ways of doing that. One is to provide a clear map at the start. And what I mean by this is like, if you have a sentence that says, my connection and experiences with these animals have been a major part of shaping who I am today, I go, I relax. I go, cool. This is gonna be an essay about animals and how they've shaped you. Cool. I can relax knowing that know what this is about. Like it kind of signals to the reader, like, yes, I know this is gonna be a college essay and I'm doing it through this particular lens. If the student doesn't do that, and they don't have to, but if they don't do that, the reader's kind of wondering, where are we going with this? And so then I think it's really important if they're gonna, for example, use a creative opening to start, they need to provide clear signposts along the way, usually at the starts of the paragraphs. Does every student have to do this? Not if they've given a clear map. If they've given a clear map, we don't need that sentence at the beginning of the second paragraph or the beginning of the fourth paragraph. It's like another animal that has shaped my values in an important way is, because we've already done that, right? That's what starts to get a little bit redundant and like, but it's those students who start with something clever, like I've been pooped on many times, and you're like, wait, what? Where are we going? And you're kind of like trying to find the thread here. Okay. So what you'll see in here in this guide is there's a little flow diagnostic to see if the student can actually outline their essay from memory, because that's a good test to like, are the ideas connecting or not? There's a little way to do that. But then you'll see a bunch of different transitions. One is the what I did next transition, which is, as it sounds, just sort of like here, and then I did this other thing, and then I did this next thing. Or, here are the steps that I took to solve a problem, or steps I took to level up, to get better at something, or to try to improve in a certain area of my life. Then there's the translating, essay that has the connecting back to your topic way of doing this. So, for example, this student sets up in the beginning of their essay, and it's linked here, like the translation is a big part of their lives. And it talks about translation in a whole bunch of different ways. And you'll notice how in the essay, it just keeps connecting back. The usefulness, I think, of this particular thing is when students are trying to figure out what is my, how am I connecting these ideas? It's got a bunch of different options. Okay, let me pause for a second because I'm talking a lot. I want to see what questions have come in. Someone came in, access to the Choose Your Own Adventure tool. You get it through CEG Live. So if you sign up for CEG Live, it's for school counselors. You'll get access to it. We're going to send a word out for IECs to get access soon-ish, probably in the next month or two. But for now, it's through, it's through CEG Live. So sign up for that, and then you get access to it through that. Yay. All right, what other questions? It could be related to revising or other parts if you want. Can we use these tools for the UC personal insight questions? Kind of. You can use some of them. So Olivia, I have a whole separate tool for that. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because I know that not everybody has students that apply to the UCs. But for the UCs, it's slightly different. Here, let me just jump you into this. This is also through CEG Live to get access to this. but I have a separate UCPIQ tool. I know this is going to be a little overwhelming for some, but I think for the UCPIQs, when it comes to revising them, some of those questions will relate, but some of them won't. I don't know if I want to get into all the details of that right this minute, but in short, kind of. And the reason I think is that it's slightly different what we need for the PIQs. So when you hear me talking about college essays, I'm like, vulnerability is a good thing. For PIQs, not so much. We don't really need it. These are personal insight questions. They're about getting information. They're about what sets you apart from other students. If your students are applying to the UCs, the important things are information, clarity, action, like what did the student do? Do we get a sense of values? Might be nice. And then some insights, but I kind of put them in this order because I feel like the most important things are information and clarity, and maybe you took some actions. These things are what I would call like bonus, would be awesome, does add, I mean, I think values actually is information. Insights is information about how you think, but I don't necessarily put like vulnerability or craft on that. And so based on that, I think that the advice that we give to students is slightly different. I hope that wasn't too dissatisfying, Olivia. If you've got specific questions about CEG Live, just email help@collegeessayguy.com and we will hook you up. Yes, exactly what Michael's saying, that your PIQ response should answer the question. Totally. Okay. What else did I say I was going to talk about that I didn't talk about? There were like 2 or 3 things that I was like, ooh, let me get to that. Because I've mainly like delivered like in a half hour, which is what I'd hoped to do, most of the main things. But I'm also like, let's do Q&A. Let's get into it. Oh, the one thing was like the link to Sanjay's course, which is coming up. I had the wrong link there. That was the other thing. Is there a deadline for signing up students for the boot camps? Soon, by the end of the school year for sure. Well, I would just say make sure that they're signed up before the boot camp starts. I know that sounds super obvious, but there's not like I shouldn't say it. There might be a strict deadline and actually we'll email you about it. But I would say sooner rather than later. We're trying to hopefully, catch you a little bit before APs and stuff gets on, before the madness begins. Let's get into, I'm happy to get into details too of like revising stuff. Ooh, what's considered a too creative essay? Ida, I like this question. I'm gonna go with it. So I would say a too creative essay, I'm trying to think of examples of this. A student, for example, on my course year before last asked me, can I write a poem for my essay? And I was like, and I wasn't sure because I wanted to be like supportive, but I was like, I've never seen a poem work well. And so I was like, all right, what do I have that I can offer? And I was like, you know what? I've got 4 qualities that I feel like if this poem can give these 4 qualities, I'm cool with it. And the qualities were core values, vulnerability, insight, and craft. And the student actually did it. She did it really well. We talked about it on the match sliders, the We Are Match sliders. I'll actually it's a beautiful essay. YouTube college essay guy. I'm gonna share the link. There it is. So the student actually reads her essay and it's beautiful. So this is an example of something that somebody might call quote unquote too creative, but if you look at it, you'll see it does all of those things: values, vulnerability, insight, crafts. So I think it would feel too creative if it was doing that or not giving skills, qualities, values, and interests that a student's going to bring to a college campus. I mean, let me just because we've got, 50 some awesome counselors here. What are some awesome examples of creative essays that you've actually seen work? And what are some examples of creative essays that students have tried that tend to not work? So that we can kind of, get the wisdom of the crowd here. And I'll answer that question in just a second. But creative examples that totally ended up working, ones that you're like, when students try them, invariably, they seem to not work out. 30 seconds of radio silence, you can type in the chat. I should say webinar silence. Here's the link to Sanjay's session, by the way. I'll just put that in. Yes, Mixon. I'm gonna find an example here real quick. I don't know that I'll share the example essay out, but I will share with you. I will answer that question and give you the example essay. Because that's one that tends to be hard to pull off. I want to answer this question too. All right, I'm going to read some of these. So, Mixum, yes, let me come back to you in a second about somebody writing about someone that they admire. Those are really hard to do. Essays as a playlist. I'm with you, Myra. Those, in my experience, have not worked well at all. I've seen probably 12 of those. One of them worked, but I find that playlist exercise or essays often work better when students are connecting to different identities, like different sides of themselves. So it's kind of like, I find that a playlist essay is kind of like a writing about someone else essay, where they really want you to like this person, or they really need you to share context about this person or this song in order for it to like be in your head, because we don't know the person, we don't know the song. And so they end up giving a lot of energy to the person or the song, and it's not doing the job of giving the concrete skills, qualities, values, and interests. So if they are going to do a playlist essay, get away from the song as soon as they can, maybe connect it to different identities. Those tend to be richer in my experience. Let's see. Should we be copying all these links, or is there a recap of the links sent out? We're going to send some of the links out. I guess it depends on which ones. I would say, I mean, if you haven't copied them out because it's too late, we're not going to send like all the links. Like most of the links that I've shared are inside the Choose Your Own Adventure tool. That, except for the log lines one. So I would say grab the log lines one. That's not inside the Choose Your Own Adventure tool. The rest are inside the tool. And thanks, Aisha. Yeah, you can save the whole chat. Essays about a part-time job, doesn't connect with their values or interests. Yeah, that can be tough too. Let me give a quick example of an essay that was about someone else ostensibly, but that actually worked. So here's a student who wrote, throwing caution to the wind and succumbing to her curiosity, Pandora cracked open the lid and peeked inside of the beautiful box gifted to her by Zeus. Immediately, a slew of wicked spirits came rushing out and flooded Earth with greed, war, pain, and a legion of other evils that turned man against man and man against the world. What is this essay about? What are we talking about? Because Pandora made this disastrous mistake. Now, the reason I'm actually okay reading on is the author has already built trust with me with some of the word choice and the craft. So I'm actually okay reading on. Sometimes I like my eyes glaze over, but I'm actually kind of drawn in. Why? I'm hearing things about like gods, and there's some interesting language in here, like succumbing to her curiosity and spirits came rushing out and flooded Earth. Because Pandora made this disastrous mistake, fossil fuels pollute our atmosphere, great creatures are poached to the brink of extinction, and people continue to hold others down to raise or protect their status. I made out of the brain or brawn of a great mythical hero, but I'm a feminist, social activist, and environmental warrior who is ready to ally with Greek gods to save planet Earth. What I love about this opening is that, first of all, this is one of those like, hey, relax, I got this moments where it's like, here's what I know that this is gonna be about a college essay. And the students talking about specific identities, feminist, social activist, and environmental warrior, which is kind of suggesting to us that these are identities that the student's gonna be exploring. What the student does in this essay, and I'm not gonna go through the whole thing, but I'll go through the first paragraph, is she talks about how she connects to different Greek gods. Now, the reason I think this essay works is that we have some knowledge about who these gods or goddesses are. So like Athena, goddess of wisdom, knowledge, and all things bookish, has had a huge influence on my character. That's all all the time the student spends talking about the person themselves. If a student's writing about their great uncle Ray, who, this and that, and they spend, 3 paragraphs talking about them, cut it, right? I want to know about you. So I'll sometimes say, like, just as little as possible of context about the other person. This is all I need. I've got some themes: wisdom, knowledge, and all things bookish. So let's hear, how is the student connected to this? Well, she says, when I was young, I was pretty introverted. I was known by my family and friends as the timid youngest child who always had a book in hand, one often about Greek mythology. This phase was essential to the fabrication of my current self. Like Athena weaving glorious tapestries at her loom, I wove together a conglomerate of novels to form my own set of values. She lists a whole bunch of books and how they shaped her. And then she says, none of what these books has taught me could have any gravity if I didn't apply them in my life. This is a cool so what moment. I needed to leave my cocoon and find a goddess who could teach me how to be bold. So simple structure here. I know I'm going kind of fast and kind of doing a quick analysis of this essay, but somebody asked, hey, give me an example of how to make an essay work about people. So again, keep it super short when it comes to like talking about the person. Give lots of specific examples connected to values here in the middle. And then it's nice if a student can come up with a little so what moment that says, why did you just even, what it was, or how are you thinking about this? Show us your critical thinking. Then she talks about Artemis, how they've connected to her. And yeah, so that's an example of one that works. I think y'all have probably seen enough examples of ones that didn't work. If you haven't, they go something like, my grandmother has had the biggest impact on my life, and then it's just like, here's this ode to grandma and she's so amazing. And you're like, at the end, you're just like, wow, I'd so love to meet your grandmother. Right? We've been there. So anyway, and if you haven't been there, you'll be there soon. Let's see. Admit grandma, exactly, totally. What else? What else do we want to talk about? Questions that we can, I like this crowdsourcing too. It's fun to just have folks chime in. Because I just put the chat in and put the link in while folks are thinking about questions, and I didn't really talk about what it is. I've got a cool session with Sanjay this afternoon. Some of you were maybe at the earlier session today, but we're talking about how to build a successful college counseling program. Now, this is for high school counselors. If you're a high school counselor on the call, he's giving really practical. We did an awesome session. It went over super well on how to help students with stuff like right now, like evaluating their financial aid letters, how to get them ready for summer. I love how clear and practical Sanjay's suggestions are. He's got a ton of experience and he's really good at building systems and helping save time. He's also really big on self-care. That's something he'll talk about today. Ooh, a timeline for the essay. Thank you, Emily. You just filled a thing in that was like, what? And I'm just like, yes, that was a thing. So timeline. Okay. If you're working in the school setting, I'm not going to stress you out with like, you should be doing this right now because you've got your own calendar and things that you're doing. But what I'd say is, if possible, in the school setting, and we'll talk about, independent counselors in just a second, I love it when that time that's sort of in between finals, whatever it is, APs, IB, and end of school, there's like a little week in there where students have, in my high school, it was like, let's watch movies, right? I don't know if they still do that. Some schools I imagine do, but it's like that movies week is the time when I think is a really good time where students haven't totally checked out yet. Yes, they're a little bit tired, but there's a little gas left in the tank. I was going to say a little juice left in the tank, but that's not what we want. A little gas juice left in the tank, and giving them some brainstorming exercises and encouraging them to work over the summer on their essays and giving them like practical ways to do it. Obviously, that's what I'm choosing because that's when we're leading these, these sessions. I think if a student can be done with their Common App over the summer, super awesome bonus points. That's the goal, right? And if they're thinking about early schools, those supplemental essays are probably going to release August 1st to August 15th. If they can get, if they're doing an early application, 1 or 2 schools done on the supplemental essays, great. For example, let's say they're applying to a school with a YS essay. So there are bunches, but like, let's say it's USC, for example. USC has historically had a YS essay. If they can do their research and figure out why they want to apply to USC, and I would say do it with a school that they're like really motivated to think about and do research on, get the personal statement done, supplements for one school, and then the activities list and additional info, which is going to be kind of a work in progress because some activities are not going to be doing until, senior fall. Some activities are going to be, we think we're going to start this club, but we're not sure. And then the additional information section, getting them thinking about that. Sometimes that won't be completed until at all, or let's be real, or wait until way late in the fall, right before they submit, but letting them know that that is an option on their application, especially for those students. Here's the other thing I said I was going to maybe talk about. Those students who are thinking about writing about mental health challenges. Quick side note, this is like a sneak peek of the YouTube video, but I was just at the Super ACAC conference, and one of the things I asked a couple of admission officers is like, what are the topics that you're seeing a lot right now? And they said anxiety, depression, that's coming up a bunch. I see a couple of you nodding. I don't think that this means tell students definitely don't write about this, but I think letting them know that this is a somewhat common topic, I think can actually be informative and useful for them to know. Letting them know too that they can put that in their additional info section. If they've experienced something and they want to talk about the challenges and effects, what I did about it, what I learned, put those in bullet points in the additional info. Great. Then use your personal statement to talk about whatever else you want. Some students are going to be like, no, I really, really want to write about this. And then, there are certain ways to do that. Inside the tool, we'll show students how to do that. But I think it's important, obviously, to talk about what they've done and what they've learned through the experience. But I'm such a fan of encouraging students to use that additional info section because I want them to feel heard. If it's something big that they've thought through, that they've worked through, and they feel like this is an authentic part of me, and if my application would be incomplete without this knowledge or this information, then great. And it gives them a place to put it. How to encourage students to do the free choice essay and stand out. Oh, well, I don't even look at prompts. I just guide them through brainstorming exercises. And I tell them, don't worry about the prompts right now. Write an awesome essay, find an awesome topic, and then just pick whichever prompt. Maybe tell them that more half of the students who apply through the Common App choose the topic of your choice. And maybe even quote a college. I need to get a college admission officer. Actually, do we have any former college admission officers who have read for the Common App who could go on the record right now as saying, I do not specifically care which prompt you choose when it comes to the personal statement, because then we can quote you when we're talking to our students. That would be awesome. Would somebody write, would a couple of folks who are, I'm sure there are former admission officers who would be willing to go on the record real quick? Just put your name and say former admission officer, and we will believe you. But from all the admission officers that I've spoken with, nobody's like, you need to pick prompt 2 because it's better than prompt 7. Admission officers don't care. What they care about, in my experience and from the conversations I've had, is, are you including skills, qualities, values, and interests that you'll bring with you to a college campus? So I don't know, Ida, I'm kind of answering your question. We haven't had anybody type in yet, but anyway, actually, do we have any UC readers or former UC readers who could say it doesn't necessarily matter which prompt you choose? Michael's typing. Michael, I know, has worked at the UCs. If not, that's an action item. I should do that. I should just talk to a couple admission officer friends. Tom on our team would be willing to say that. He's worked at Pomona and Holy Cross. I can't here we go. It doesn't matter which prompt for Berkeley. There we go. Thanks, Randolph. In other words, I mean, obviously it matters that the student answers the prompt, but it doesn't matter if they've chosen prompt 2 or prompt 3 or prompt 8. I think it's harder. I will say, I think for the UCs, it's harder to choose prompt 8 for the PIQs. I would encourage students, this is different advice here, Ida. I would encourage students to, oh gosh, how do I summarize UC advice in 1 minute? I would encourage students to brainstorm topics for their UCs based on their activities list and what they've done, because I think that's a more efficient way of helping students to get topics. That's inside the tool. There we go. We don't care which prompts you choose. Thanks, Michael. There we go. Former admission officer. Great. Michael Trevino. Former admission officer. Will you just let folks, I mean, I think I know, but will you just let folks know where you work? If you're comfortable, if not, it's okay. I mean, I know that you put Harvard Summer Institute and college admissions and UCs, but maybe just add that. That would be awesome.
I mean, do you want me to put it in what I wrote, or?
Oh, I mean, just so that folks know, so that they can be like, Michael was an admission officer at?
Yeah, at Harvard.
There we go.
And also taught at the Harvard Summer Institute on college admissions with all the
now,
deans and directors, not only of Harvard, but also of other selective places. And part of the people that we taught at the Harvard Institute on College Admissions included admission officers at other selective institutions. So it's a much broader scope than just myself. And then at UC, I was director of undergrad admissions for the whole UC system. So we did the training and how applications are read for all of the UC campuses.
There we go. And there we
And
have it officially.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
Go ahead. Were you going to say something else?
Oh, I was just going to say, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that you do answer the questions, whichever prompt you choose to answer.
Yeah. That's when there's that cognitive dissonance, right? If a student's been like, has picked a prompt that's about, let's say, you know, an important time in your life when your life was changed, that's going to create an expectation in the reader's mind. So one thing, I've never actually said this on a session before, but essentially what the prompt is for setting the reader's expectation. And if you want the reader to have an expectation about, you know, whatever it is, let me just grab the Common App prompts real quick. I'm just Googling Common App prompts. Here. So if you want the reader to have an expectation about a time when you question or challenge a belief or idea, then they're going to be waiting for like, okay, but what was the time when you question the challenge or belief or idea? Sometimes students will struggle. They'll be like, I just, if I see them over obsessing with the prompts, I'm like, can we just go with this for now so that you just take that off your plate? Because I think it's just, I don't know. I just find that it's more useful and productive to talk about some of this other stuff. And by other stuff, I mean, like, do you have specific examples and are you revealing specific values? Then, you know, answering the prompt. I think I'll say that for the supplemental essays, I think it's really important to answer the prompt, and the expectations are super clear there. Like if they're asking for a YS essay, you know, don't just be like, here's more about me. It's like, well, no, but why do you want it to, how are you going to be a fit for our institution? Yeah, Michael, jump in.
Yeah, I was just going to add a caveat. When I say we don't care which prompts you answer, and that's to reemphasize the strategies that you talk about, Ethan, in that, but which prompts you choose to answer does become important. I mean, sometimes we're puzzled by the prompts that a student chooses to write because they didn't give us the information that we wanted to know.
Right.
And I would say this becomes especially important if you're applying to maybe a more competitive major. I'm going to generalize here, but certainly for students who are applying to STEM majors, you want to find some sort of a way between your essay and if you have supplemental essays that you are giving us the information that we want to know about you.
Beautiful. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that clarity. Let me do one final thing, which is like, I know that some of you are already signed up for it, but I want to make sure that it's like clear if you're turning your students over to me for a week, like what I'm actually doing with them on these CEG live things. So just to clarify, when students sign up for CEG live, you know, essentially the Monday, Wednesday, Friday sessions correspond to different parts of the tool. So let me just jump back into the tool real quick. So on Monday, we're going to do brainstorming, and students will spend an hour with me, essentially coming up with a bunch of different ideas and topics. And their homework is to go away and actually come up with like 2 or 3 ideas. And I've got all these different paths that they can work through. Now, you can just totally be like, go to talk to Ethan for the week, and I don't even want to hear from y'all until the end of the summer. Or you could be like, you know what? If you work over the summer, you go, hey, I'd love to like see what you're working on and the ideas that you're coming up with. And there's specific advice on how to pick a topic and questions that they're going to send to you potentially if you want them to. Again, you don't have to. On Wednesday, I'm going to talk to them about, okay, once you've got a topic that you might like, here's how to actually outline it and start your draft. And then some of the stuff that I talked to you about today, like revising, is some of the advice that I'm going to give them on Friday. So the goal here is that students have at least one, but hopefully 2 or 3 different ideas that they can work with. Some will be montage, right? Which is like stuff they love or know a lot about. Some will be about their identities. And in some cases, students will be writing about challenges. But just so you know, I'm not like encouraging students to write about challenges. I want all students to write, you know, to try these montage ideas. If students have faced challenges, then great. But I kind of like, I put that second, as it were, and I de-emphasize that a little bit because I just don't want students to be like feeling like they have to write about challenges. But anyway, I'll put the link in once more, and would love to see y'all there. And look, that pay what you can offer is real, y'all. Like, I really don't care what folks pay for this. I really just, you know, I'm going to be leading these things anyway. I'd rather have more students show up. Mixum asks, do you have any suggestions that of who a student should ask to read their final draft. I heard it's best not to have too many people provide feedback because it overwhelms the process. But I do think it's important to get a final edit from an adult with editing skills. Well, not just editing skills, Mixon, but I think that, I mean, I think you're a great person. I think somebody who not just has editing skills, but somebody who has awareness of what colleges are looking for. And I think what colleges are looking for is, again, the skills, qualities, values, and interests that are going to bring, they're going to bring with them to a college campus. But one of the things that I do inside the tool is I tell students, let me just give you, I'll show you where it is. I give students I think it's important for students, whoever they ask, to equip that person with specific information on what they're looking for. So when they're trying to finalize it, I give them this great college essay test, and it comes with this little PDF that's here, use this and give the person that you're asking feedback from, give them this and have them, answer, does it do these things? Okay. And I think that can be, a smart adult, but I think that just clarifying that these are some of the things that we're going for can be really helpful. So yeah, you're welcome. Are the UC and Common App prompts going to be the same this year? I believe so. I think did the UCs come out officially? I think they did a while back. Y'all can let me know if the UCs have come out officially and said they're keeping them. The Common App has. When's the best time to have students see essays that work, before or after they have a draft? I would say I like it before, because I feel like if we contextualize it well and we go, hey, look, I'm not saying write it this way, but here's an awesome draft and here's cool specific things that we can learn from that. I think that sometimes students are intimidated initially, but once they kind of push past that, there's great stuff to learn. So I'm a fan of showing it to them early. I think that the benefits of showing them an essay that works outweighs the cost of them feeling initially intimidated. So I'm a fan. All right, we'll call it there. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for being here as ever. And yeah, I'll see some of you later this afternoon. Let's put that link in one more time in case folks want to join for that session. I'm going to be talking, well, actually, it's mostly Sanjay's going to be talking about, how to improve your counseling department. And otherwise, I'll see y'all real soon. All right, bye.